Well, good day, everyone. I'm Louis Richardson, and I am Chief Storyteller at Cinity. And with me today, I have Jamie Kelly. He's a European and Africa Marketing Manager. Hi, Jamie.
Hey, Lewis. How's it going?
Doing well. And the topic that we are going to kind of explore today has to do with making complex things simple. It's one of the things that we often in technology space struggle with, because we live and breathe complex things and difficult things all the time. But the challenge is, how do we actually explain that to people that don't live in the same environment that we live in? People who maybe run projects or are responsible for budgets or responsible for these things, and maybe they don't know the ins and outs. And it's difficult at times for someone who really knows something really well to explain that in something simple. The reason Jamie's on the call is because he and his team have done something really extraordinarily recently that I just applaud when I saw it. And so what I'd like to do is just let Jamie give a short explanation of what it is they did and how they went about taking a story as complex as data migration. I mean, something as complex as moving systems from one to the other, to a level that a kid could understand that. So Jamie, tell us what you did.
Thank you, Lewis. Yeah, I'm quite happy to talk you through it. So really the story is well, fairly atypical. So we didn't wake up one day and say, we want to write a children's book about data migration. That's certainly not what we did. But that's what we ended up doing, is writing a children's book about data migration. How that really came about was just trying to get to the root of what we were trying to achieve with this story. Because we realized in our sphere, in our marketplace, that data migrations are very, very complicated. People that have gone through them before understand that. Companies that have gone through them before understand that. But we were finding out that as a business, the typical customers for us were ones that have either done a data migration before, or people that have gone through this data challenge before and understand the different problems that can come up and understand what we mean by a complex data migration. So what we have embarked on in our marketing team is to try and produce more educational material, try and help and inform our audience on what can actually go wrong, and unfortunately, whenever we try to articulate that out, it becomes very complicated.
So Jamie, this idea of putting something simple and putting it in something as challenging as a children's book. I mean, I think what you've done is amazing. How did that first just start off? The fact of how did you come up with the fact that you wanted to do a children's book, and at what level of child are you trying to reach?
Yeah, well, to start off, we didn't want to create a children's book when we when we met for the first time. That didn't enter our thought process. For us, we wanted to help create some more educational material. So because we understand as a company that we work best with people that have worked or done a data migration before, or been in organizations that have done data migrations before. And we wanted to share some of their challenges that they've seen, some of the the hurdles that we help businesses overcome. So we wanted to articulate that to the audience in a new, refreshing way. And we'd already done a manual of migration, a kind of DIY, IKEA style manual for migration. And that was received really nicely, because it was very much, here's our view on the world, here's what we think the do's and don'ts are. And we let the audience take it and use it without trying to be too overtly salesy about it. And that's when the brainstorm of what next came about. And during that brainstorm, which was a meeting between myself and an old colleague, Lana Fowler, the idea of putting this narrative, we always use the word journey when referring to a data migration. How can we tell this story in a different way? And that's when the idea of a children's book came about. And it's a good idea when both of you leap out of your chair and right, we need to do this now.
Yeah.
And that's exactly
the thing I like about the children's book is I often am challenged, especially when we're in a sales process or in a marketing process where you're trying to explain something, and it's the idea of getting that thing down to a level that people can understand. I mean, you and I and the people that we work with live this and have lived it for decades. And so therefore we take a lot for granted. And yet when we speak to people, especially when we're getting to C-level executives and some of the executives in the company, their ability to quickly comprehend some of the things we're speaking about, we throw acronyms around, we throw things around very casually, and they're not easy concepts to grasp. And so the children's book, I mean, I think you'd said earlier, or you told me one time that you were looking for get something that a 5-year-old can understand.
Yeah.
And I think that was quite a challenge. So with data migration from the technology side and so forth, there's a lot of stuff that happens. There's a lot of movement from one system to the other. There's a lot of data and cleansing and quality and all that kind of stuff. And you, as you mentioned, you're trying to do this for somebody who's never done it before. The people who've done it before, they know the challenges. They've lived it. They it's like you telling them their story, they would get it. But for somebody who's never done this before, which is the target of your book, you've got to explain these things in ways that they see them as, as being a storyteller. You have to have those hurdles that you have to go over. You have to have those things that make you a better person or a better person through the life of the story. In your particular case, you and Alana decided that those hurdles would be, for the kids' benefit, it would be monsters. Tell me about that. Tell me about that, and tell me about the monsters that are in the book.
Well, every good children's story has monsters in it, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
Those are the ones that are certainly memorable, and whether it's Harry Potter or Lord of the Rings or any great children's story, or even younger you can go, they all have that core sense of there's something mighty and fearsome to overcome, and that's how we view migrations. Without us, there are so many hurdles that maybe, you hear the myth, of the dragon in the cave, and it seems very far off, and okay, it's not going to be that scary when you actually encounter it, but it is. And trying to tell the story in this particular way was really why we tried to. And the monsters themselves, they're effectively a manifestation of 4 different challenges, and that's a lack of visibility, a lack of orchestration, a lack of automation, and poor data quality. Now, when I just said it in those terms, people are probably like, "Oh, right, okay, no, more techie speak, right?" But that's the thing. We're trying to articulate those particular problems in a new, refreshing way that hopefully people will understand, and hopefully that will resonate.
So we'll kind of walk through these. In fact, maybe when we actually run this play, we'll as we play this video, we may show some of the monsters because the visuals are just beautiful. Yeah. But the lack of visibility, I mean, that was what, Orc, the Unsighted, was that right?
Orc the Unsighted, and credit must go to Apollo Avery, a tremendous illustrator, just coming out of school, and did just a tremendous work on the children's book. It was very important for us to have a local student do this, to have that authentic feel, and Apollo did just a tremendous job of this. So the first one, Orc the Unsighted. So he is a manifestation of lack of visibility. I think this one's fairly obvious. He's got a blindfold over his eyes, and it's his job to effectively blind Milo along his way.
So we have Milo. He goes after Orc the Unsighted and has better visibility. So who's the next one he meets?
Blunderslip effectively slows things down. That's his role in the story. And we say that because when we talk about a data migration which is very unautomated, it's very manual, very spreadsheet driven, then there's so many opportunities for delay, whether some person doesn't realize that they've received the spreadsheet and sits in their inbox for 5 days and goes unactioned. That's what we mean by Blunderslip.
Okay. I can recall, because I hear stories of, prior to us getting involved in a lot of companies, people tell stories of how they go into into status meetings week after week, and they're always saying, well, we're having to slip. This is slipping us back, or we have delays, and they're unforeseen delays. And so that the unseen part, and now the Blunderslip piece of people just not fulfilling what they need to do in a certain amount of time. So those are 2 very real monsters that are faced. What's the third one?
So Jumblebum is next up.
Okay.
That's the manifestation of a lack of orchestration, and that's such a huge one whenever you're doing a migration project. If things are not appropriately workflowed through, people don't know what they're responsible for, then that's when delays, costs really scale out of control. And what we're trying to articulate here is that with an appropriately managed piece of software that sits on top of the whole project, then you have a great opportunity to ensure you know what's happening at every point.
Yeah, and I think too, when we think about the data, I was stepping back up to data migration projects as a whole, because they impact so many people. Some people may think, well, data migration just impacts this one group. This IT group has to get together and figure this out. But in reality, there's so many people who are owners of the data, responsible for the data quality, and that orchestration among all that group of people is a significant risk. And so what you're portraying in this book is that there's this need to make sure everybody's on track, everybody's on target, and everybody is able to see what other people are doing and make sure they know what they're responsible for, and then it's done or not done. So that's good. And then we've got a final one.
Yeah, and arguably the most important one as well. So the Decadon, it sounds like the most fearsome one. That sounds like the boss level for Milo to overcome. Even though he's got his three monsters now on his side. If you're following along in the story, he's now up to Decadon, the final one. And that's all about having poor data quality in the project. You know, there's no point moving old, inaccurate data to your new system, whatever project you're trying to embark on. So you need to ensure that data quality is being managed as you're going through the migration project.
Yeah, I love the way the book starts off, because it's a very personal story of him and his wife and his children, and the fact that it's one of his children's birthday, and he's going off to do this work. And although it takes place in the course of a day, we know migrations take longer, but for them, it happens in the course of a day. And the question is whether he's going to be home in time to actually celebrate the birthday. And that ending of the story has Milo, as you said, he's met the monsters and he's tamed them. I love the fact too that the monsters don't go away; they become manageable. In fact, we'll talk in a minute about an experiment we did with some little kids. But they noticed the fact that there were these larger monsters that were scary, and then later on, after they were treated, they still existed, but they were friendlier. They looked friendlier and they were more manageable. And I think that's a great approach. But at the end, it's about Milo making it home to his family, right? It's about him doing the things he wants to do.
Yeah, and the idea for that came from a very real story, actually. So I was told the story of one of the partner account directors that we work with. And he was getting constant calls about the migration project. It was going off track. This was obviously without Simity in the building. And the migration project was going off track, and he was getting all of these calls whilst he was out at the park with his family, you know. And there was the story of one of his kids pulling at his sleeve, as he was on the phone about it. And that's when it really comes home that, unfortunately, these are the types of things that when they do crop up, you can't just say, I'll pick up on Monday. These are huge migration projects. If they don't work, there are massive problems, massive system failures potentially put out there. But what we did was come in, get the project back on track, put the steps in place, gave the visibility to the people who need it, and effectively gave weekends back, brought families back together. That may be putting a very grandiose spin on it, but that's effectively what we can do. And Milo's journey of trying to get back to for Millie's birthday is really an articulation of that very real story, which is why it, I think, really hits home.
I happen to not only be the chief storyteller here with responsibilities at work, but I have 7 grandkids, ages 9 on down, and there's 4 of them that live in the city where I live. And I thought, what I'm going to do is I'm going to take and read the story to them. And so I took as an experiment, Jamie, I took your story and said, well, what if I read this to a 9-year-old, a 5-year-old, and a 3-year-old? And what would that look like? So we'll take a few minutes now and just show you some of the excerpts of that telling of that story. And then afterwards, I'm going to play a bit of a clip. And this is a clip of my 5-year-old, which was your target audience, which is great. My 5-year-old granddaughter, Lily. And she was quizzed the following day with her thoughts on what the monsters were. So what did she remember from a day later? And her observations, I thought, were pretty spot on. So we'll take a moment and do that now. So this is a story about what people like at Papa's work, what we do, but it's made for little kids to understand, and it's called Mastering the Migration Monsters. Because there's monsters in the story. You guys okay with monsters?
Yeah. I have monsters.
You have monsters on your PJs, I know. Milo's very nervous.
He knows that there are lots of things that could go wrong, but he wants to keep everybody happy. See, that's his boss. What is that, boss? He doesn't look happy, does he? No, he's mad. And this one's happy, right? And Milo's worried.
Why?
Because something might go wrong. So Milo has done everything he can to be ready. He's asked others how best to do it, but all he's heard were horror stories of how migrations can turn very bad very quickly. Then he asked why. Monsters came their reply. The four main mischief makers were ready and waiting. Orc, the unsighted, who loves to keep people from seeing the truth, and Blunderslip, who's slow and hides things in the wrong places. Monsters taken care of, Milo stands tall among his friends, and he feels like a true hero who got to finish the migration project on time and without having to ask for extra coins. Milo wanted to be back in time for Millie's party. Now with work having gone so well, he's arrived early. That means a bigger surprise for Millie. So tell me, which of the monsters did you think was the scariest?
I think it was the
When you have projects at school, there's one that kind of sometimes you just like you have a hard time finding stuff, and this guy here makes things go slower. He slows down where stuff just doesn't seem to work, and this one gets everything all confused, and this one makes you lose stuff. Which one's your problem when you have projects, things to do at school?
my problem when I'm scared of this one.
That one where you can't see things. Yours is the takes the stuff away and hides it.
Yeah, because I really like my pencils.
Yeah, you like your pencils and stuff, and if you can't find them, that's sometimes a problem. Yep. And sometimes I know that sometimes things just go slower. Yeah, slower than you expect them to.
So Lily, tell me about the monsters in Papa's book.
Well, there was one that had a blindfold on, him, and he made you from seeing the truth.
He made you from seeing the truth? Okay, what else?
There was a slimy one.
A slimy one? What color was he?
He was blue and he had like pencils and paper stuck in him, and he wanted things to go slower.
Like, what do you mean go slower?
Like,
Just okay, what else? Were there more monsters or only two?
there was more.
Okay, two more. Okay.
There was one. But there was one that had puppets on his hand.
What did he look like?
He was blue and fuzzy, and he made you. He distracted you what you were supposed to do.
Oh, a distraction monster.
And there was one more that was like glitching, and he has clear eyes like a triangle, and he makes you lose things that you really, really, really want to keep.
Oh, like what could you lose?
A trophy.
Oh, was it a good book?
So Jamie, you've seen the full videos in the past, and I'll tell you, the experiment itself, I enjoyed it so much just because I enjoyed being able to share with these kids what it is I do. It's hard sometimes to explain what you do, and they were very curious. They were like, this is going to be a great story. It's going to have monsters in it, and I was even more impressed, I think, with what the excerpts you saw from Lily. And the day after, what she remembered. I can tell you, I've been in meetings with people who've explained things to me before, and if you'd asked me the day after, what did I hear, I probably couldn't repeat much of what they had to say. But here's a 5-year-old who understood at high levels what this meant and what were the monsters. So what was your takeaway from that?
My heavens, Lewis, was I nervous watching that. You try and write a story with a 5-year-old in mind, and we really did. We were constantly looking at it. Is this simple enough? Would a 5-year-old understand this? And when it came to it, and you've got your grandkids there looking at and trying to understand the story, and I was just like, oh God, did they understand it? Did they understand it? And it's one of those very, very nervous moments as someone who's produced this book to ensure that we've actually delivered what we set out to, and it seems like we did, which is really.
Yeah, it was wonderful to watch. It was wonderful to listen to, and again, I think that the challenge is obviously our target audience is not 5-year-olds, but I do know that the target audience that we have, sometimes, as you said, they may overestimate things, and in some cases they may underestimate. But when you think about going into a data migration, especially for somebody who's never done it before, there's some scary bits, and if you talk to people, they'll go, there's a lot of things we got to worry about, and there's these challenges, which. It's true. There's some things you need to be aware of, but they're not things that you should be scared. In fact, one of the things that the grandkids took solace in was when Milo was going through the story and saying that he was scared, but he had no reason to be, or it was one of those things where he was like, he didn't have to be scared. And I think that's a message in and of itself. There's monsters, but they're tameable. And when you tame them, they can assist you in the further monsters, which I think is a great part of the story. And so I would just encourage the people who are listening. First of all, we'll make it available to you. We'll figure a way to show you a link or something to where you can actually download a copy of the book, because it's a wonderful book to have. Also, we'll show you some contact information of how you get in touch with us. But likewise, in whatever channel this happens to be given in LinkedIn and so forth, feel free to comment. Feel free to ask us questions. Jamie, any challenges or anything that you would offer for those who are listening?
Try and view it through the lens of a 5-year-old. Is this a story that you would understand? Is it something that your children would understand, or your nieces, nephews, whatever? Would they understand it? Because that's ultimately what we've been trying to achieve with this. There's plenty of other bits of marketing material that will explain the full length story to you. Come in and have a meeting with us by all means. Yeah. This is meant to be a creative way that we can tell our story to you. So hopefully you enjoy it and you understand the message we're trying to get across, and that you can master the migration monsters, which is the key thing of the story.
Yeah, Jamie, brilliant work by you and your team. I look forward to whatever our next efforts are. I'm kind of interested in where we go from here, but I know that we'll do something else unique. From a storyteller standpoint, I can't tell you how much this has meant to me to be a part of this and have some at least some input into the story, but more importantly, just gaining the benefit from having it. So thanks for doing the work, the hard work, and making it easy. Okay.
Thank you, Liz.
Thank you, Jimmy. See you guys. Bye.